Good afternoon, everybody. This is Sabrina Stewart here with TCC's Educational Talent Search, and today we have a session for you all about the ACT and science. And my staff is going to share with you what they've learned, which is that it might not be the kind of science that you think that it might be on the ACT. So this is a really helpful session. Hopefully, we'll have some students join us as we go, but I also know this is a time of year with a lot of different things happening. So I'm going to let Miss Yama Williams and Aaron take over the show. And that's it for now. Thanks for joining us.
All righty, guys. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And we have a PowerPoint that we will share with you all at a later date. On the PowerPoint, in the PowerPoint, we have a lot of links. We will cover, I have links for almost every slide, but we will not cover all of the links. We will only hit on certain links today. And then we will, when Sabrina places the link, the PowerPoint up, you can always click in and see that a little bit later. Good. Okay, so I'm going to share. Okay, as you see, this is the ACT Prep Science Review. Okay, what are you expected to know when you come and start to take this portion of the ACT test? You will have 40 questions and you have only about 35 minutes. You have 4 multiple choice questions. They're going to be referring and reasoning questions. They will be science presented several authentic scientific scenarios. You're going to cover biology, chemistry, earth, space science, and physics, which is a lot. But we know that you're more than able to do this and do this well. What I want to do is consider some of the strategies. The first one I want you to consider, and I want to give you a link for us to kind of go over. You will, if you notice, you will have to skim your questions first, and answer and be confident in the ones that you choose. What I would suggest is when you're reading over your passages or you're reading over your questions, answer the ones that you know right away. Just go ahead and answer them. If you don't know them, put a question mark or put a mark beside it, and you can always, at the end, you have time to come back. But meanwhile, I'm going to
Can I say something quick, Yama?
Huh?
Can I mention something really quick?
Oh, of course. Sorry, you
Yama.
can.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that when I took the ACT a couple times, I used both of those strategies, and the one that I use in tests even to this day is going back to the questions that you may not know. So indicating it with a question mark, make sure that you do it very lightly on the test, so you don't make too big of a mark, but a big enough mark so that you know, oh, okay, I need to go back to that question and then check that again. Because if you answer the ones that you are confident in, you have a better chance of getting those ones right. And then just going back to the other ones that you're a little confused on at the end, I think that really helps out in taking the test.
I think you're right. And not only that, but sometimes as you're answering the rest of the questions, it may spark. And when you go back, cause a spark. And when you go back, you can say, oh, yes, I remember. Mm-hmm. And then you can answer that question the second time.
Yes, totally agreed.
Okay, I am going to stop this. And and I want to show you something else. Okay, we're going to see if this works for us. Does everyone hear?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay, good.
Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about the dreaded ACT science section. We get a lot of requests for science section tutoring and science section videos. So I thought it would be a good idea to make one here that would cover some basic hints and strategies for this section. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is actually somewhat straightforward here. I don't believe this should be called the science test. And the reason for that is you don't actually need to know an awful lot of science for this. So let's consider this to be the science reasoning test. A lot of the strategies that we're going to use here and a lot of the line of thinking that we're going to use here aren't going to be all that different from the reading section. It's just that now you're going to have some graphs and charts. So let's take a look at a few really basic hints and strategies here. The first thing that people do that we need to be very careful of here is a lot of people start by reading the whole passage. Now, reading the whole passage isn't necessarily a bad thing, but there's a time limit on the test. And that time limit is 35 minutes for 40 questions. That is not a lot of time. So now we get 6 passages with 6 to 7 questions on each one. And of course, that means you have just under 6 minutes per passage to get through it. If you start out by reading all of this information, you're going to have a really, really difficult time getting through it all because the information is very dense, the information is very, very scientific, and there's a lot of terminology. So our first hint is to go directly to the questions. Once we do that, let me just change this to a draw here. Once we do that, well, what do we do with those questions? Once we go to the questions, we're going to use the questions to determine where to look. That's the first thing we need to do is the where. So I've got a couple of example questions here. I don't have any of the data in here. I'm going to go over the specific questions in a moment, but let's take a look. This first question says, study 1 differed from study 2 in which of the following ways? So is this likely to be a data question? Not really. It's asking you how the study differed. So we're going to look at the descriptions of study 1 and of study 2. Now, a lot of the time, what we'll be able to do is actually find the key difference in study 2 because it'll say something like, study 1 was repeated, except. And again, I'll go over these specific questions in a couple of minutes. The third hint is to underline key terminology in the questions. And that is going to be most obviously noticeable here. Suppose that an additional trial in...
Okay, guys, I'm going to stop that. I wanted to share that because that was going to be on our PowerPoint. He goes through and details each question, how you should view it, what you should do, how you should circle things. He really goes into a lot of details. And I thought that that would be a really good idea and a good view on what you need to do and how you need to attack some of the questions. So that was the reason I entered that one. I put that one in our PowerPoint, just so that you could take a look at it. And if you wanted to always go back, you can go back and revisit and study and study and study. Okay?
Yama, and what he was saying about the science reasoning, that's a really good thing to remember too.
Yes.
The reasoning is going to be your brain and how you think about certain things. And so he's saying that it's going to be reasoning based around science. And so we know that there's the skill of science that is, okay, I have skills in chemistry. I have skills in biology. I was in that class. I have the book at home. I got a B on my report card. And then there's the reasoning, which is somehow why we do those STEM kits sometimes at home. Your science reasoning is thinking like a scientist. And you get better at that by doing hands-on things. And also it does take practice. So anybody who just goes into the ACT and just, they got a B in their chemistry class and just opens up the ACT book, they might still have trouble because the reasoning part has to be developed too.
Does anyone have any other comments? Feel free. All right.
I will
Go ahead.
say I agree with you, and that was a surprise to me when I took the test. I thought it was going to be a lot more content based.
Yes.
I found it to be much more problem solving and thinking like a scientist. And I actually felt like I liked what he said about how it's similar to the reading portion of the ACT, because it's a lot of going back and finding, where that answer is and kind of inferencing skills.
Very good. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to go back to our PowerPoint. Okay. Now, this is just going to be an overview on the science in the background and what you're going to have to do. But I put this screen here, this slide here, but I really believe that the guy does such a much better job than this. But I placed it in there anyway, just in case someone didn't want to watch the video. Now, you will be permitted to use a calculator. You will have data representation in this, the first section. It's going to be 30 to 40% of your test. I have like I said, I have a link there, but we're not going to go over that link. You're going to have questions. The types of questions would be factual questions. These questions simply ask you to relay factual information that is presented in the passage. The second type of question would be interpreting trend questions. These questions ask you to evaluate graph, tables, or a scatter plot to decide if there is a relationship. And the third type of question is going to be calculation questions. These questions ask you to take what is given and figure out where it is going. Okay, now for the data representation, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to let Erin start to share. Erin,
is there a way you can allow for me to share? Oh, there we go.
Yes. Thank you, Sabrina.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, let's look at this one. So this, okay.
Oh.
Can you guys see that screen?
Mm-hmm.
I can see it.
Okay, awesome. So reading skill type number 1, reading visuals for scientific data. Let me move this Zoom. My camera always gets in the way. There we go. Okay, so this says most questions test your ability to understand scientific data by reading graphs, charts, and other visuals, such as diagrams and scatter plots. To make the test challenging, ACT tests these basic skills of reading visuals in unique ways using strange graphs that you've never seen before, such as this one below. So as you can see, this is a strange graph. You don't typically see graphs like this, but let's read this part really quick. So it says, actually, let's read the question. So the question says, based on the figure, does S depend on the frequency of a sound wave of given intensity. So looking at this graph, we can find the graphs of S by looking at the top of the graph and seeing where S is labeled. So we see S is here, S is here, S is here, and S is here. And these are the lines that are represented. It says S is graphed as a vertical line. The S is unchanged. It remains constant. So it's important to look at the question and see what it's really asking. So we can see that it's asking about S and if it depends on the frequency of a sound wave of given intensity. So I drew this little graph because this looks like the types of graphs you'll typically see. And so we know from math class or from science or looking at graphs that as Y increases, X increases, and it looks, oh, I wish that this could move, but it'll look like this. So the arrow, it is linear and it goes up like that, kind of like that. As frequency increases, S increases. So let's look back here. Okay, this is frequency, but we don't see that S looks like that arrow that we just drew. So let's go back down. Yes, because as frequency increases, S remains constant. So I drew this as a straight line across because as frequency increases, S remains constant. That one's not true. No, because as frequency increases, S increases. So I drew that same line. And no, because as frequency increases, S remains constant. And that's what it'll look like. So down here, it says, although the graph gives many different pieces of information, as you saw, it was pretty hectic looking, ignore all of the extra information and just focus on what the question is asking. Does S depend on frequency? Labels are very important. That's key. I can find the graphs of S by looking at the top of the graph and seeing where S is labeled. We looked at it earlier. It's at the very top. At all of the different values of S, S is graphed as a vertical line. As frequency increases, which happens along the y-axis, the S remains unchanged in a vertical line and remains constant. Therefore, the answer is J. And then here's a link to the 3 types of ACT passages for more information. So that was a lot of information. It's kind of a confusing looking graph. Do you guys have any questions right now as to the information I just gave you? Or any follow-up comments?
No.
It was, I appreciate walking through the thought process of it. That's one thing that Yama and I had talked about. It's about the thought process of science, scientific thinking. And so it's better to, I'm glad our students could see that type of graph so that when it's the test day, they won't just be like, what is this? Never seen this, I'm not ready for this, let me move on. You're gonna find lots of things you've never seen before. That's not the point. The point is you can see what the question's asking you and can you use the skills to then answer the question. So, you know, Alicia and Arelsi, it might not be something you've ever seen before, but Science Queen helper Erin kind of at least walked us through a little bit of figuring out how to look at information that you've never seen before and still get the right answer.
And I think a good way to not get overwhelmed with that information that we've never seen before is to use that strategy of reading the question first and pinpointing and picking out exactly what it's asking of us, and then looking at that information, and we can, you know, easily identify, okay, this is S and this is the frequency.
Okay. Righty. Thank you so much, Erin.
Thank you, Yama.
Okay, so as we move on, you're going to see a lot of graphs in your science, but don't, as Erin says, don't get concerned. Just consider it just like you consider when you're doing your math and when you're doing your reading. You use those same types of strategies. Okay. Let me get back to where we were. Now, there's another section. It's going to be a research summary. It's going to be 45 to 55% of your test. The format is going to be descriptions and results in one or more related experiments. The question focuses on the design of the experiment and the interpretation of the experiment results. Now, what I did was I added, and let me enlarge this so that you can see everything. Can you all see that?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. I added, oh, this one was the one that,
There you go.
here it is. I added a link here. It's in this part of your test, you're going to identify the purpose and methods, understand the factors, and you must read everything because for this portion, they may ask you something in particular, especially when you're talking about purpose for the experiment and the method in which they're going to use. As I said, I have a link here. So when Sabrina puts this up for you, you'll be able to go to the link and it will give you a lot of information. The next one is conflicting viewpoints. You know, this is probably, at least I thought when I remember this is probably, it was most complicated for me because you have to analyze the differences between the information that they give you, and you have to look at the graph in which they give you. So I have another link up here. Don't get confused, don't get stressed. It will take you through the information, and also they suggest that you circle your supporting details, which you do when you did your reading portion. Language arts. So don't be concerned about that. You will be able to get through this one also. So I have a link up there for you. Now, the other one I wanted to show you, and this was 40. This is interpretation of data. This is 40 to 50%. Oh my goodness. But I would like to share with you another video because these people did this so well that there was no way I could make this sound any better than what these people did. So I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to show you another video.
And Yama, while you're doing that, I'll say too, for conflicting viewpoints, you can think about that as people disagreeing about scientific things. So, you know, just like in your school, people disagree about things. You talk about what college do you want to go to? Well, you know, I want to go to UCF in Orlando. Well, I want to go to University of Miami because it's the best and I don't want to hear anything else about it. But let me tell you why it's the best. And you give 3 reasons. And then your friend says, well, here's my 3 reasons about UCF. So conflicting viewpoints is going to be science things, though. So it might be someone talking about a certain thing about that's scientific. And then they're saying, I think it's 1, 2, 3. And the other person is saying either I agree or I disagree. But if it's conflicting, they're disagreeing with it. So you know that right away. And they're going to tell you their reasons why. And then you have to usually answer some questions about why they disagree.
Hi guys, this is Cynthia Gosain from Veritas Prep, here again for this week's edition of ACE, the ACT. So today we're going to be talking about data interpretation in the science section. So the general concepts that you should keep in mind is that you should not be reading the explanatory passage that comes before it. Obviously, there's one passage usually per test that consists only of passages, and there are no charts and there are no graphs to look at. So there you have to read the passages because those are the little experiments. That is the data. But usually that's not the majority of the passages, and you might need to go back to the passage for maybe one question. But again, you should never start by reading the explanatory passage that comes before the figure or the chart or graph, etc. Another thing that they ask for very often, which is what you're going to want to look for immediately, is changes across one category or similar values across different categories. If you're given a graph, you want to read the axes because that'll tell you what questions you need to look at that graph for. And if you're given a chart, you need to read the headings because, again, that guides you to which questions the chart is useful for. So let's take a look at an example here. So we have a chart. So roll time is our heading here, and then this is just showing our trial. And so the two kind of different things they were changing in this experiment, which is the other important thing for us to look at, is the time taken before shaking and the time taken after shaking in seconds. So let's pause the video and take a look at this example for a second. And we're back. So the result of shaking the can of the beverage was that something. So what happened between the before shaking and the after shaking? What changed? So going back to our table here, we can see that in this first trial, so again, we're going across we're going across rows basically. You don't want to look down for this because you're comparing trial by trial. So before shaking, it took 1.86, and after shaking, it took more. And that's the extent that you should take with you when you're trying to answer the question. So it increased here. What about in the next trial? It took 1.75, and then it took 1.93 seconds. So again, it's increasing. So that's what we're going to look for in our answer choice here. So looking just for the word increased in our answer choices, only B and D have that. So right away, A and C are out. Now we need to pay attention to the parameter that they're discussing in each answer choice. So B talks about the mass of the can, which we never talked about. So it has to be D because D talks about roll time, and in the chart, the heading that we talked about was roll time, so that fits perfectly. Okay, so let's pause the video and
Okay. Does everyone understand that one? It was just so great. It's using your strategies to narrow down your answers without having to read everything, because we do have to remember you are timed. Okay? Okay, I'm going to stop and go back.
That was a good example. She was a smart test taker, you could tell.
Yes, she was. She was a smart test taker. Okay, hold on. Okay, now the rest of my PowerPoint is just going to, let me go over this one. It's going to tell you, because you have your ACT book, it's going to tell you exactly each chapter and how it's broken down. So in this experience, this one, it will tell you your page numbers. It will tell you how much you have learned. It gives you like a pre-test and the post-text. And then it gives you answers and explanations. So as you read through your book, you're going to be able to answer, they ask questions, answer those questions, and then they will give you the answers and why that answer is correct or why it isn't correct. And so I have chapter 22 and chapter 23. All of the rest of the PowerPoint is the same type of setup. And I wanted it to be consistent so that you will be able to go through your science book with no confusion. So each of them has, and that's chapter 22 through 26. And that's the end of your science section. And then the only other thing I wanted to add, oh, let me ask you if anyone has any questions before we get to the last part.
I don't
So
see
you
any in the chat.
okay. You all don't, and I picked up that ACT book. The first time I picked up that book, it was amazing to me because I said, oh my goodness, there's no way I'm going to be able to get through this entire book and learn all of this material. And if you don't stress and just go through the book chapter by chapter, understanding how it's set up will help you to get through the book and learn all of your material. The last slide that I have is that I wanted to remind everyone that we have tutoring that is available for you all, and that if you have any questions, I actually on this page, I also included our email address. We have fee waivers if you need them. And this one is our initiative program. So that is actually my PowerPoint.
Perfect. And Yama, I always show them, I'm going to show them just the steps to get to the tutoring if they
Okay.
need it. You can type it in the chat, but Felicia and Arelsi, I hope I'm saying that right. Did you all get report cards last week? You can either unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat. Did y'all get first 9 weeks report cards last week?
I got my first 9 weeks a while ago because we actually started school on August 9th.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
how I don't need to know what the grades were, but how were the grades? Good, bad, or in the middle?
For my first 9 weeks, it was good. And my second 9 weeks, which our report card should be coming out in a few weeks. So far I got all A's.
All right. Wonderful. We love to hear that. Thank you. And Arelsi, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself or put it in the chat about your first report card. Have you seen it yet?
We haven't gotten it yet, but they said we were going to get it next week before, hopefully. So yeah.
Okay. Are you expecting it to be pretty good, or you don't know yet? You're not sure?
No, I'm expecting it to be pretty good the first 9 weeks.
Very good. We love it. Well, that's perfect. So let me show you this link anyway. And I'll say this, even if you have great grades, tutoring and content review just keeps your brain sharp, especially with sometimes not being in school as much anymore. And it's just not as intense sometimes. The brain grows if you stretch it, and it will stay the same if you don't. So let me just share, lots of screen sharing today, but I want to share just so you can see this, because you might need this over the break, or who knows when you might need a little bit of tutoring. So if you go to, I'm just going to type it in, TCC, Educational Talent Search. Look, there it is. And there's our link. That's just a different way to get to it. And you come there, when you click on tutoring, you can click the link below and put in your email address, and then all caps TCC ETS. And there is tutoring that you can have, and also really good skills review for math content, reading content. And now they have 24/7 tutoring in Spanish, as in not Spanish the subject, but if you speak Spanish and you want tutoring of like math in Spanish. So that's like the newest thing they just emailed out. So that could be helpful. Tell a friend. If y'all, so girls, y'all have any specific questions for any of us?
I do. It's about the PowerPoint. How could I access it?
Yes, so I'm gonna post it, but I also will send you, so Miss Yama, will you send it to me in an email so I can post
Yes.
it and send it
Yes.
out? So we'll send it out through email.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And also, as a thank you for attending today, both of you all sent me your email addresses. So tomorrow, if you look in your email address, you will see an e-gift card to, I don't know which place I'll pick tomorrow, but it'll be an e-gift card that you can use for $10 to cover the cost of early dinner or lunch or whatever. So I'll email you that too. That's all we have. I will say, Khaleesi, I know you picked your picture already for the painting. Or else, if you're interested, I can send you a link. We're doing a painting event in December for our students. And so you can pick which picture you want to paint and we will order it for you and get it to our students as like a thank you for participating in the fall. I can put the link in the, actually, is it better to put the link in the chat or should I just email you that too?
Could you email it to me, please?
Yes.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I'll email it to you, then you just respond with which one you want. Okay.
Okay.
So let me end I always forget to stop the recording. Okay.